Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy, and we're talking the Royals today, as well as Pierre Poilievre up in Canada, winning back his election seat so he can go back to the House of Parliament, as well as a bunch of other news. You got anything for us?
Yes,
Oh, we're going to go right into the first story.
I guess.
I thought we were going to have a casual chat, but okay.
Well, what do you want to chat about?
You're talking about getting your haircut really short.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Then I don't have to
I
wait
did.
for 3 hours for you to get ready. That'd be great.
I did it once. I'm never doing that again. Oh, where's the camera? I'm never doing that again.
Okay. Well, let's go right into it here.
Yeah, it's easier. From Fox News, Prince William's mistrust of Meghan Markle is stalling peace with Prince Harry. According to an author, the British monarchy supporters dislike intensely the Duchess of Sussex, says Ingrid Seward.
Yeah, there's been quite a few stories coming up like this lately, and it's rather surprising because they're both from the same side of the political aisle. One's just more progressive than the other. The monarchy is more traditional liberal globalist, while Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are ultra progressive.
At the moment, it didn't used to be that way. But
Yeah.
at the moment, it has gotten very, for lack of a better term, woke, especially with Prince Charles and also Prince William and a lot of the initiatives they've been doing. I mean, we saw the coronation during King Charles's coronation, which was ridiculous, in my opinion, and they did take away a lot of tradition that should have been there.
Well, I also think when Markle and Harry came over to the United States, they were really set up to make all the right connections in progressive Hollywood and progressive politics in the United States. The problem was the culture shifted in the United States, and it gave a bad rub not only to Harry and Markle, but to the monarchy as well.
But then we also kept seeing a lot of examples of what was happening with the monarchy itself, but let's see what they say. So Meghan Markle is said to be a major factor in the ongoing feud between Prince William and Prince Harry. Can they still call him Prince?
Well, I don't really think the family's going to come together until there's something major that happens, like maybe their father dies. Circumstances will kind of have to bring them together, and then they'll have to mend the fences. I don't see it kind of happening unorganically. So I don't see either side really reaching out until something major happens, like a funeral.
The claim was made by Ingrid Seward, editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine and author of My Mother and I. Seward, who has been writing about the royal family for over 20 years, claimed that William, heir to the British throne, is aware of how supporters of the monarchy in the UK feel about the Duchess of Sussex. I think everybody is aware of that by now. The flea in the ointment really is very much Meghan, Seward claimed to Fox News. She's disliked intensely by a large number of the monarchists of this country. They see her as being very damaging to the royal family, and also I think a lot of people in America feel the same, and in Mexico down here as well. They don't like that Meghan reportedly dissed her husband's family and dissed her own family. It's just extraordinary to think that her children have not met their grandfathers, Seward shared, referring to former Hollywood lighting director Thomas Markle.
Well, and I think I think he's right. Meghan Markle is really disliked to an extreme. Well, Harry has been demasculinized, and people have just lost respect for him. But if situations would come and he can reclaim his masculinity and do some right things, maybe be a little bit more moderate or conservative, basically grow some balls, people could gain respect for him again, possibly. Meghan Markle, I think she's a lost cause. I think she's betting on the progressive left, and she's just hoping the political scene shifts back to that because she set herself up well for that political kind of climate.
And on identity politics, especially. She relies so much on that, being a woman, being a feminist, being a person of color, or half a person of color, I guess. And also with Harry and William, do you think it's even worth trying to get them reconnected?
I think once their father dies, they'll definitely reconnect.
I don't know, because during the funeral for the late Queen Elizabeth II, I mean, that was very tense as well. And the way they behaved was one of the reasons why the divide kind of furthered and grew. They grew farther and farther apart.
Yeah, I almost think Harry and Markle should have stayed in Canada. They moved right by us on the island. We were from Vancouver. We used to live in downtown Vancouver. We now live in Mexico City. But when they first linked up, they bought a house and were right by Victoria, which is kind of the capital of British Columbia, and it was just too quiet of a life. They wanted Hollywood. When they went down to Hollywood, it was a mistake because they bought heavy into identitarian politics, like you said, and then the culture shifted on them. The rug got pulled out from right underneath their feet, and now she's sitting in a bad spot. Canada is still extremely progressive. If they would have stayed there, there wouldn't have been any problems. And Vancouver is a big city where they shoot a lot of movies. We used to work in the industry up there, and I think she would have done fine for herself, but she was blinded by the big lights. She thought she had the prince on her arm, so the sky was the limit. I think she quickly found out the sky wasn't the limit, and now the sky is falling.
And well, at least now they have that Netflix deal, so they can rely on that. But speaking of Canada and more actual news, from CTV News, Central Alberta voters have spoken. Poilievre back in the House with big win.
Yeah, so this is great. I like Pierre Poilievre, although I think he's desperate to portray himself as a populist, and because he's a lifeline politician, people don't quite always buy fully into it. They do like, I like a lot of his policies. I think Americans would generally like a lot of his policies too. They're safe conservative. He won't come out ahead of issues, but he will get behind them once he knows they're safe issues.
Mm-hmm. As he did during the truckers' convoy and the protests, but also during all of the trans insanity that was going on in Canada in general, but it's also in Vancouver. I remember we linked up with Billboard Chris, and he kept saying, I keep trying to contact Pierre Poilievre, and he's kind of ignoring me. And he came out to say it publicly on Twitter. It's not like this big secret, but after a while and after a long time of people kind of haranguing him on the whole trans issue, speak up, say something at least about not transitioning minors, then he finally did take a milquetoast stance. But at least he's the only politician in Canada almost that has done so, other than the PPC.
Well, and he's kind of betrayed conservatives in the United States. He's directly betrayed the Trump family through Donald Trump Jr. it started with, but there was a string of incidents. They really don't like him now. It's going to be hard to heal that relationship. And that's a shame, because the way the Liberals are really trying to manage this tariff deal, they're failing on everything. If Pierre Poilievre could have come up like, oh, I do have a close personal relationship with the conservatives in the United States, with J.D. Vance, with Donald Trump, he could have really leveraged that he could get the best deal for Canada. But this TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, is just off the chain in Canada right now.
And also now during this, when he had to get reelected, during this, there was a lot of stalls and stops that they were trying to put in and measures during the voting process that seemed like they might be, actually going to stop him, but it seems now that it wasn't so.
Oh, let's say one more thing here. He's in a lot of trouble right now because, yes, he did win in a riding that was heavily conservative, but the problem is he won in Alberta. There is a huge separatist movement. We don't live in Canada anymore. I'm still a Canadian citizen. I want to see Alberta separate. I would like to see BC separate too. A lot of other conservative Canadians are in that same boat. But Poilievre can't come out in favor of a separation movement, because then he'll look like he can't really run for Premier of Canada if that's the case. And that's his ultimate goal. That's why he's kind of getting back into politics or re-emerging himself. So he's in a catch-22. He's going to divide himself on whatever he does. He was able to kind of avoid the issue in the run-up and in the this riding election. He's going to have to face up to it, and people are going to have a lot of questions. So I think he's going to try to avoid the questions.
And he was the one that ran up against Mark Carney, and Mark Carney won. And now we're even hearing a lot of Liberals saying that they're regretting having voted for Carney because of the way things are going and the measures he's implementing that are angering both the Conservatives and the Liberals, funnily enough. But the people of Alberta rural riding Battle River Crowfoot have overwhelmingly chosen Pierre Poilievre to represent them in Parliament after he secured 80% of the vote in Monday's high-stakes by-election. Jim Hillaby, 81, a retired farmer just outside of Camrose, Alberta, Alta, the largest jurisdiction in the sprawling rural riding, says he isn't surprised by Poilievre's victory. He did the work. He went on to every rural area in this riding, which is a very big riding. It took a lot of time. I would say 90% of the guys who were running yesterday didn't even show up in Alberta, let alone the riding.
And I think his wife's Venezuelan, if I'm not mistaken. Was that correct?
Yeah, she's from somewhere in Latin.
Well, they need to mend the relationship with not only the Trump administration but the Americans in general. If he doesn't want to go directly to Trump, I think the best segue would be JD Vance, because JD Vance used to be a never Trumper. He explained why he came around to that ideology, why he agrees with Trump now. Him and his wife look a lot like Poilievre and his wife. I mean, they do have a lot of things in common. I think JD Vance could be the bridging thing between the Conservatives in Canada and the United States. I just don't know if the Conservatives in the United States are in a forgiving mood after the antics Poilievre kind of pulled on them.
And in a lot of ways, the Conservative Party in Canada has been more akin to what we would think of regularly as more liberal or more to the left, because they've adopted so many policies and they have been so scared to actually take a stance on a lot of issues that are at the forefront of what Canadians are thinking, the ones that would be willing to support them.
Well, and again, now he's coming out in full-fledged of we need to stop immigration, but he's done this years later. He wasn't willing to get out in front of this issue. He's really milquetoast in the beginning. He really waits to see what the polling says, much like Trudeau used to do. He used to wait for the polls. Now, I do like a lot of what Poilievre says, and it's the best option Canada's got. So if he's on the ballot, I would say vote for Poilievre. You wouldn't be in the situation you're in Canada right now if Poilievre had gotten in and not Mark Carney.
And I mean, in Canada, it is a little bit harder, but at the same time easier to get rid of prime ministers because you can have a vote of no confidence. And again, because there's a lot of sentiment brewing, both in, like traditional paid off subsidized media and independent media, of people saying, and articles and opinions being written saying, Mark Carney is not what he promised. Mark Carney is not delivering. Mark Carney is doing everything wrong. So if there was a vote of no confidence and now Poilievre is kind of in, that would give a better chance.
I completely disagree, just because the polling numbers are still really high on Mark Carney. The Canadian economy, people that are in the know understand it's going to fall apart, but it still has the illusion of sticking together. So if he manages to mess up the North American Free Trade Agreement, which is going to be renegotiated soon, that would be the nail in the coffin. And I think that would eventually would collapse the Canadian economy to the point where even moderates wouldn't be able to ignore it. And that would be the time for a no confidence vote. Do not do a no confidence vote right now. Also, if Alberta does separate, which they're talking about having the vote next year, if that vote was successful, that would shortly after that would be the time to vote for a non-confidence vote with Mark Carney as well. But as it stands right now, they've manipulated the numbers and they're able to give this illusion that things are still going okay. All the statistics are starting to go down, but he can still make it appear to the majority of people that don't watch politics and the economy every day that things are going okay.
But what I'm saying is it is interesting that at least, the media and this public sentiment is, because with Trudeau, it wasn't until the very, very end that people were allowing themselves to believe and think that, oh, this is not a good idea. With Carney, I think they're getting to that point a lot faster.
No, because when I watch the liberal media as well, I think you're really in a bubble on this one, because I take a look at his polling numbers every day because I'm shocked.
Well, but the polling
I'm shocked his polling is so high.
Because it's manipulated.
I'm just saying Trudeau's polling numbers were never that high.
Because maybe they learned and they said, oh, we have to make it appear more like his polling numbers.
Now is not the time for a no confidence vote. They need to wait. Although he's not doing anything, he's just not doing anything. That's the thing. But as long as he doesn't do anything, things haven't collapsed yet. So that's the issue. And the North American Free Trade Agreement really protected the economy somewhat in Canada. So even though Trump is tariffing some products, he's not tariffing a mass amount of products which would instantly collapse the Canadian economy.
But we also do see some still trying to, question how the hell this happened. So from Mark Nixon, CTV, CBC, Liberal pundits are still losing it over Poilievre running in a riding where he doesn't live, while admitting Mark Carney did the same thing. Without double standards, they'd have no standards at all. So CTV is gross, as we know. We are going to listen to the clip, so.
Okay. I don't have my headphones
I'll
today.
Listen to it.
I grabbed this clip, so I know you kind of know what it says.
So it's not like Poilievre had to just come in and win. There was a real sense that there is a conservative vote sitting there for him. and he has to get it. He has to get it all, or else there's going to be questions about, whether he's really got the hold on the party that he needs to have at this point. I think, it would be remiss not to point out Bonnie Critchley with over 5,000 votes as an independent candidate is a really interesting outcome. And I think, it's possible that some of the people who would typically vote Conservative.
And it was an absolute blowout in this race. So her saying that somebody else got a certain number of votes, and no, he won over 80% of the votes. It was a complete blowout. This is cope. The thing is, if Mark Carney would have once he starts making a lot of wrong moves and the economy does collapse, if Poilievre wasn't there, I don't think he would lose support so quickly, but with a strong leader like Poilievre there, people are going to naturally gravitate towards him now. So this is going to become a big problem for Carney in the future.
Heard her message around, Pierre Poilievre doesn't live here. I'm someone who lives here, who's been here, who is like a real local candidate. And I think the whole thing
and 40,000
has
got
prompted
5.
some really interesting questions about
he looks like a trans man.
the being able to run in a riding that you
Well, she said she, so.
Oh, maybe it is.
don't live in that's legal. We're able to do that in Canada, but I think there's been some thought about this in the past while. And I mean, totally, Mark Carney I don't think he lives in Nepean, and so Pierre Poilievre is not the only one. But I think we've kind of been thoughtful about this.
And it has happened quite a lot in Canadian politics where people don't live in their ridings or register for different ridings. So highlighting that Pierre Poilievre did it, and maybe that's why some people went against him while actually not going fully against him because he got 80% of the vote, is just, again, the cope and seething that we continue to see. And I am interested to see how many will try to defend Carney once things start crumbling more noticeably.
Well, Carney's going to make an outright under-the-table payoff probably to the NDP or one of the other smaller parties in order to stay in power, so they make sure they never call an election into the last moment. I'm sure that's what's going to happen. So,
as they tried before.
Yeah.
But also...
And it worked before.
Yeah.
It took a lot of years for the Canadians to actually even get their election because they were... Even though it was a minority government with the Liberals, they were able to sway the NDP over. A lot of people think with backroom deals. The vote just never came to be.
To form a coalition government kinds. But also in Canada, apparently the disaster that was Air Canada for now has been fixed.
Yeah, and this was great news, but I did like to see these people striking and standing up for themselves. I am in favor of unions. I know a lot of Conservatives aren't. It's a traditional Liberal thing, but in this case, the unions went on strike for one day. The Canadian government came in and said, we're going to arrest you if you don't go back to work. They put an emergency back to work order, and the union ripped up the order and said, we're striking. Air Canada came to the table that night and gave them a deal that looks like they couldn't refuse. It's a temporary agreement, but it looks like it's going to go ahead and become something more permanent.
So from the BBC, Air Canada to resume flights after pay deal struck with union. If you didn't know, a lot of flights were actually grounded. Flight crew at Air Canada have ended a dispute with the airline that had grounded flights and stranded thousands of passengers since Saturday. A tentative agreement was announced by the union representing flight attendants and confirmed by the airline. Flights began resuming later on Tuesday. More than 10,000 staff walked out in protest at pay and scheduling. The deal has not been disclosed in full, although the union said it achieves transformational change for workers in the industry. The airline proposing immediate pay increases of between 8 and 12% for flight attendants, according to CBC News. Flight attendants need to ratify the proposed deal. The breakthrough came early on Tuesday, 9 hours after talks began, with help of an approved mediator appointed by the government. Unpaid work is over, they said.
Yeah, and basically the airline or the flight attendants weren't getting paid until the landing gear went up, and then as soon as it touched down, they weren't getting paid for anything before or after. That means helping customers off with their bags, with checking people's passports beforehand. None of that was paid. It seems highly illegal. The fact that the government stepped in and said you're not allowed to strike for your own rights, considering they weren't getting paid for the work they were doing, made the Liberal government look bad because the flight attendants were part of their voting base.
Yes. And also because it was ridiculous that a lot of people I didn't even know that they don't get paid while they're checking you into the plane or like checking tickets or doing any of that. That doesn't go into their actual normal pay.
Oh, yeah.
So the fact that I don't agree with unions usually, but that they were striking and that they were trying to reach
they were under
something fair for themselves.
Yeah, they were under minimum wage at that point. And in Canada, like you need a union. We worked for a union with the Teamsters, and it was a good job because the union did protect us. That's the thing. Sometimes unions can get ingrained and people get paid too much. But a lot of the time, I'm a big believer in unions myself. So.
And with the government coming in and saying there's a back to work mandate now and you can't strike, it's insane because in Canada, Air Canada is not the only airline out there. Like if they were an essential service and there was no other way for people to, use that specific service, okay, maybe, but because Air Canada is such a big name for Canada and it's one of the things they still rely on a lot publicly, like outwardly facing towards the world, it scares the government that this looks as like a big stain on the government.
Well, there was 4 or 5 other situations where the government had stepped in and said the workers have to go to work because that industry is a critical component to Canada and the economy. Because the government was stepping in so frequently, Air Canada just assumed they would again. The Canadian government did. Air Canada was just surprised when the workers tore up that back to work order and they instantly came to the table and instantly negotiated.
And they said, like the union leaders said, if they want to come arrest me, then go ahead. We're not moving. We're not going back to work. But speaking also of Canada's older, more annoying cousin, breaking the Labour government in the UK has reversed its decision to access British citizens' encrypted Apple data following demands from JD Vance.
Yeah, and this is
supposedly
great. So I'm constantly talking about digital ID, the censorship in the UK. The UK is currently being used as the tip of the spear to go after corporations and businesses and kind of say you have to follow UK law if you want to do business in the UK. And rather than making up special protocol or a special type of video game for the UK market, they just completely change all their basic speech needs and things like that. So basically, if you're in the United States and you have free speech, because the UK is not allowing it, US companies are bending the knee to the UK.
And they will continue to do so, but at least Apple was able to kind of stay afloat. From Reuters, U.S. spy chief Gabbard says UK agreed to drop backdoor mandate for Apple. So this meant that the UK wanted Apple to give them some sort of access through a backdoor, which Apple doesn't even have. They don't even have that in place because they want to try to protect their customers' privacy, but the UK government was trying to force them to.
Well, Donald Trump and the Trump administration needs to start standing up for U.S. corporations, and they had started to do that, but then these tariff deals kind of came along. I think those took priority. Now that a lot of these tariff deals are starting to be settled, I think they're going to make free speech a priority again in the EU and the UK, primarily because the US wants to have that cultural influence around the world. And US social media companies and media companies in general do have the most influence worldwide. They won't have that influence if all these companies have to capitulate to Italian law, UK law, EU law, NATO law. Like, it's just not going to work. You need free speech.
So Britain has dropped its demand for the iPhone maker Apple to provide a backdoor that would have enabled access to the protected encrypted data of American citizens, says Tulsi Gabbard. She issued a statement on X on Monday in the U.S. saying that she had worked for months with Britain along with President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance to arrive at a deal. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer was in Washington on Monday along with all the other European leaders that went there as babysitters for Zelensky to discuss Russia's war in Ukraine. A spokesperson for the British government said on Tuesday that while they would not comment on any agreement, Britain had worked with the U.S. to tackle security threats while seeking to protect the privacy of citizens in both countries.
Yeah, and also the UK is doing this strategically. They're going after the biggest players first because if they can just put all their effort and all their time in going against Grand Theft Auto, which is the biggest video game out, it makes billions of dollars for each release. They're trying to bankrupt that game before it's even released and make them change their online gameplay worldwide. If they accomplish that, every other video maker is going to fall in line. If they go after Apple, Google, and Microsoft are going to fall in line. So they're strategically thinking that they'll go after the big players first and everybody else will fall in line. So they'll get the most bang for their buck. And it's somewhat happening. It's somewhat working for them. It's a back and forth right now. The Trump administration needs to start taking it seriously and lay the hammer down and protect these U.S. companies' free speech rights.
Mm-hmm. And Germany. It's like we're doing a tour of Europe. From Disclose TV, NZZ editor and former spokesperson for Heckler and Koch, I'm going to say, says Germans must be forced into military service to potentially defend the freedom in Europe.
Yeah, this is insane. And there's a lot of talk around this, about this all over the EU. There's even rumblings of this in Canada, which is traditionally a non-conscription country. So, but Canada is part of NATO. The fact that so much talk is going on in the EU right now, and if you're getting the basic pulse of the citizens in the country, they all feel betrayed by their governments, and the governments are going in the opposite direction with mass migration and betraying their own citizens by making a two-tiered police system. A lot of people are directly saying they won't fight for their governments, and a lot of military service members, long-term military service members, have now got out of the military in the EU and the UK especially.
So he said, never before have people in Europe been so free, and never before have they been so unwilling to defend that freedom. This is paradoxical and very dangerous. Therefore, conscription is essential. The citizens of Germany must once again personally stand up for their country.
And that's the issue here. The government's portraying this as their citizens have never been more free. The citizens feel less free than ever with the speech laws, with the hate speech laws, with them not being able to get social services like healthcare, Medicare, migrants being prioritized in front of them, in front of their kids when it comes to elementary school in Ireland. Irish kids are lucky to even get into the school if there are no spots. Ukrainian migrants are given first priority, second priority are regular migrants, third priority is any immigrant children, and last priority is Irish children. We covered that story a few weeks ago.
So from DW, German government split over compulsory military service. Chancellor Friedrich Merz's government has stumbled on domestic policy. Now fresh differences have emerged regarding security policy and boosting troop numbers in the Bundeswehr.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy to hear Germany say, we're going to build the largest army the world's ever seen. And they're talking about conscription right now. They want to put $1 billion into military supplies so the EU can have its own army. But we all remember what happened with Germany the last time. Maybe they should put another country up front so it doesn't look the way it kind of looks when Germany says we're going to build the biggest army the world's ever seen.
So Chancellor Friedrich Merz wants to make the Bundeswehr the strongest army in Europe, which will require better equipment and more personnel than the current 183,000 soldiers. To comply with NATO guidelines, the Bundeswehr needs to add another 60,000. The coalition government of Merz's center-right Christian Democratic Union, its Bavarian sister party, the Christian Social Union, and the center-left Social Democrats agree that the Bundeswehr must expand, but they have different opinions on how to achieve this.
Yeah, and we've seen when Trump got into office, recruitment in the U.S. went up. They're fighting so hard against conservative or right-wing parties in the EU specifically that people are just like a natural sort of nationalism comes with conservatism and with right-wing ideologies. So if these right-wing parties got in there, it would be a lot easier to, especially if they just started getting rid of a lot of the illegal immigration, for people to feel like their government cared about them again, maybe.
What do you think of conscription in general?
I don't think it's a good thing unless the war comes to your doorstep. So say in the U.S., if the homeland's being attacked, then I think conscription should be non-voluntary. So if Russia were to attack Germany directly, then I think it's fine for a conscription. But if you want to send your sons and daughters off to war to go die for a cause they don't believe in, I don't think so. And Germany wants to send a lot of soldiers over to Ukraine right now. Ukraine's not part of NATO. It's not even part of the EU.
But also with a lot of the technological advancements, do we even need that many humans?
Absolutely.
Yes?
Yes. If one army has the humans, the other one doesn't, the human army is going to win without a shadow of a doubt. If you're telling me robots are going to fight the war, I'm telling you we're nowhere near that
not robots,
part.
but like drones and boats.
And bombs.
I don't know how boat war works.
Yeah, if I pay very close attention to kind of what's happening on the Ukraine on the front line. I watch about an hour a day. I used to watch 3 hours a day. The reason Ukraine is losing that war is they just don't have the manpower, period. They have the weapons, or they had the weapons, and they just don't have the manpower. And Russia does. Russia has a lot of national pride. They're not having to forcefully conscript people. They're actually paying a very high rate, so Russians are volunteering in mass right now. And that's the difference in that war is one side has manpower, one side doesn't.
Okay.
Oh.
I have no more opinions about it.
Okay, let's go into the next story then.
So back to Insane Canada. From Melissa Rogers, insane man woke up to an intruder in his apartment, tried to defend himself like any normal person would, and now he's being charged. Welcome to Canada.
Yeah, and I did get another. Did you grab the other X article as well?
I grabbed a bunch about this case, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, let's read a little bit about it.
So from CBC News, man charged after allegedly assaulting home intruder. Like, none of those words make sense when they're together.
Yeah, this guy was I believe he was on parole with a criminal record, and he came into the house at 3 a.m. in the morning, and he was caught, and the gentleman, the homeowner, assaulted him, which he have every right to do. He's lucky he didn't put a bullet in his ass, because if this was the States, that's exactly what would have happened. But the homeowner's getting arrested for this.
Because in Canada, you cannot defend yourself, and if you end up hurting the person that was initially assaulting you or who you were defending against, if the injuries you cause are worse than the injuries they caused you, then you are the one that is at fault. And the police never get there. So a man is facing assault charges for allegedly injuring an intruder at his home in Lindsay, Ontario. The Kawartha Lakes Police Service says it responded to a call on Kent Street at about 3:20 a.m. on Monday. According to police, the resident had woken up to find an intruder inside his apartment. The two had an altercation, and the intruder suffered life-threatening injuries, police say, and he was later airlifted to a Toronto hospital. Police say the resident is facing charges for aggravated assault and assault with a weapon. The alleged intruder.
This is actually commonplace in Canada. We've covered a few stories like this, and the law is just, you can't even protect your own family in your own home, let alone your own person. So the Canadian government needs to get their act together on every level right now, whether it's the MAID program, medical assisted in dying, or it's a program where you can't defend yourself, or it's their pew pew laws. I mean, I can go on and on why I left that country, but man, I don't know if they're ever going to make a change. Maybe it is time for them to become the 51st state.
And at the same time, in Canada, there's a lot of catch and release programs, also in Toronto, Vancouver, we saw it. So the fact that you can't defend yourself against people that already have extensive criminal histories, and then even with that, they're number one release, but then you are also charged.
Well, on the top of that,
insane.
because the criminals know it's a catch and release and people can't assault them if they enter their homes, the criminals are very, very brazen. Like, I one time slammed a guy to the ground and held him there for over 45 minutes waiting for the police to come. When the police came, they said, let him go. He just broke the window. He didn't steal anything. There's nothing we can do about it.
And here's a bit more explanation of how it works in Canada. So while people do have the right to defend themselves and their property if they believe they are facing a threat under Canadian law, those rights are not unlimited in Canada, Robertson said. The law requires that any defensive action be proportionate to the threat faced. So that's what I was saying about if you injure them worse, then you're at fault. This means that while homeowners do have the right to protect themselves and their property, the use of force must be reasonable given the circumstances. How you figure that out while you're trying to fend off an intruder and an attacker, I don't know. He also acknowledged that the case has generated significant public interest and emotional response. Well, of course, because people are terrified, especially now that there's a lot more violence in the streets of Canada, Toronto, and Vancouver, everywhere in Canada. But, I mean, here's the other one where He wrestled with a fugitive who was out on probation, had a weapon, and broke into his home at 3 a.m. And
Let's go down a little
being
bit.
charged with aggravated assault and assault with a weapon.
What did the police? I'm pretty sure I highlighted the police statement. Is it at the bottom of the? Oh, here, this one.
So there was an update statement provided to CBC News. So, well, people do. Yeah, that's the one I just read. The law requires that any defensive action be proportionate to the threat faced.
And that's insane. Like, you're going to be better off if you take it all the way to its final conclusion, meaning ending the intruder's life, and then putting a knife in his hand from your kitchen. Like, that's what it's coming to. Because if he survives and he testifies that he didn't have a weapon or he didn't mean you any harm and you harmed him, you're going to be thrown in jail for it. And potentially for a long, long time.
That or worse.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if it's a person that is has special circumstances, or we have to treat them with kid gloves because X, Y, Z other, condition or thing that he may have, then you, the sane, regular person who was trying to defend your property, end up looking worse because you don't have all those special requirements that let you get out of jail free, essentially.
Yeah. Nice red shirt you have today.
Thank you.
It's reminding me of the English flag, which is our next story.
From, the Birmingham Council removes British flags because they may cause offense to foreigners. The locals' response: on their work break, they go and put up more flags and raise them higher.
We've seen this happen in the United States quite a bit. There was rainbow flags being hung up everywhere, spray painted all over the streets, and nothing was done about it. A matter of fact, the exact opposite was done about it. If you ran your tires over a rainbow crosswalk or a rainbow flag, you were arrested for it because it was a hate crime where people were able to burn American flags. It's interesting that we had this story because I didn't have a chance to grab it, but Trump is going to write a new executive order. So if anybody burns or destroys an American flag, it will be punished now. So that is good to hear. Let's see what's going on in Britain.
These ain't being taken down. We're putting them fucking higher.
And
Sorry
these things
for
are
this,
Yeah, get it as high as you can.
these things are going up all over the
Fucking
place
me.
in Britain now.
Put one on the moon if we could. Well, the man on the moon's at the top of the road, so we could go up there.
And they're using
They're not coming
primarily
down.
zip ties to put them up.
We're getting
And
these higher. Right,
because
the
they're so
fucking flag
easily
mobile.
taken down, why don't we go
Getting
into
them
the
fucking
next X that I highlighted?
Now the article?
Oh, you can go into the article as well, but they're spray painting the streets as well.
Yes. So, just like a little background beforehand, how councils tearing down England flags has sparked backlash across the country. Even a few short years ago, the prospect of the national flag being ripped down on official orders would have been unthinkable.
Well, and we were just talking about a story where they want to have forceful conscription in the UK, Germany, and a lot of the EU because they're providing more freedom than ever, and the citizens should want to fight for that. When the citizens are trying to have national pride for their country, maybe you want to let them have that, so maybe they'll want to fight for that country.
Mm-hmm. Yet it's exactly what's happening in their two biggest cities, London and Birmingham. Yesterday, as pictures show, came the extraordinary spectacle of council workers using extendable shears to remove St. George's Cross flags from lampposts in the East London borough of Tower Hamlets. Now the same battle lines are being drawn in Newcastle, Bradford, Norwich, Swindon, and elsewhere as Britons show their patriotic pride and town halls threaten to provoke fury in response. Tensions bubbled over in Tower Hamlets yesterday when around midday at Marsh Wall on the Isle of Dogs, a two-man team from the council spent several hours cutting down Union and St. George's flags. One of the employees, who gave his name only as Tyrone, told the Daily Mail, "I was sent here by my managers to take these flags down. I don't know the significance of these flags, but I've been taking them down and getting abused by people who are telling me to leave it. They ask me what has Britain become and don't take them down and tell me the mayor's expletive." I'm guessing there's Tyrone.
Yeah. So, okay. Oh, let's go up a little bit. Yeah, so you note down. Yep, right there. So yeah, as you can see, every flag post is, and it's quite a bit of work to get it up there because to climb these poles, have zip ties, all that is not easy to get a flag up there. And because they're being taken down by the city, they're now going into which is our next story.
Which one? Hold on. There we go. And the excuse is insane in itself as well. The fact that it might cause offense to some migrants, that's insane. Migrants are coming to a country because, hopefully they want to live in that country and attain to that country's rules, as it used to be a long time ago. But now the country is having to shut itself down and censor itself in favor of, or like in reverence to, the immigrants.
Yeah, I don't know. It all seems orchestrated to me, and it seems like the exact same thing happened in the United States, and the United States was first to break free. Same thing's going to happen, and I think there are a lot of ulterior motives. They're going to want to bring a digital ID. They want a natural clash between the citizens and the immigrants. It's just too crazy that every single Western country did the same mistakes over and over and over again. And like the citizens were just speaking up from the top of their lungs. They were protesting. It was obvious just by the numbers and the statistics of how they were destroying the country that like none of the stuff was good. And it's obvious, but yet every single Western government was doing the same thing. It almost seems orchestrated.
Well, yeah, the fact that the governments were doing it all in an orchestrated manner, that is orchestrated. But do you think that the response of people putting up Union Jacks and St. George's flags and other forms of patriotism, do you think that part is orchestrated as well?
No, but I'm becoming more and more of a conspiracy theorist on this. I think the government knows what the reaction is going to be, and I honestly think the next major ideology to come up is going to be Christian nationalism, and I think this is kind of orchestrated by the governments themselves, but we'll have to see.
Because right now it's a Labour government.
It's all the governments are the same. It's two sides of the same coin. It's called a uniparty.
From Basil the Great, Reform UK councillor seeks criminal damages against man who sprayed England flag on roundabout. Reform councillor Carl Perks of Worcestershire has told the BBC he will be pressing charges against the man who spray painted the roundabout. People are asking if you're disappointed by your vote.
Well, and it's obvious what Trump is doing is working, and Trump actually talked about this back in the 80s, everything he would do if he was ever president one day. Vladimir Putin actually did it before Trump, and then Trump kind of got to see what Vladimir Putin was doing. Vladimir Putin turned that country around within like 15, 20 years. It was an absolute rubble heap. And so Trump got to see what worked, what didn't, started implementing the same policies, which was actually his ideas originally. So it's almost like those two leaders are going off of
but Putin did it in a quasi-dictatorial, killing your enemies kind of way.
No.
Ending the people that weren't in agreement with you. And censoring people and calling free speech.
I would disagree with a lot of that. A lot of those were hangover policies from communism, and he's actually opened up free speech.
No.
I do watch a lot of Russian media, and they are allowed to speak up against them. So,
okay. From the BBC, police investigate St. George flags on roundabout. I'm reading. On roundabouts. A police investigation has been launched into criminal damage after roundabouts were painted with the St. George's flag. I'm sure if it was like, what do you call that thing? You draw chalk. If there was kids' drawings with chalk, it wouldn't be this big deal. West Mercia Police said it's investigating incidents in Bromsgrove, while West Midlands Police said it's aware of roundabouts being painted in South Birmingham and carrying out inquiries. Thousands of flags have been tied to lampposts in parts of Birmingham and Worcestershire, with residents divided over whether they simply reflect patriotism or there is an uncomfortable message behind them. Reform-run Worcestershire County Council said flags could remain on lampposts, but Councillor Carl Perks described the illegal painting of red crosses as acts of vandalism.
It's the country's flag. So if there's something wrong with the country's flag, there's something wrong with the country itself. If they want to become Pakistan or China, start flying that flag. And they actually are in a lot of parts, and they're not saying that these are hate crimes when Pakistani individuals are putting up Pakistan flags. That was another story I actually didn't have a chance to grab today, just because we had so many stories, but that's why that particular instance came into my head there.
Because they don't, I was trying to see if they said what they mean by something more sinister, or what it might mean.
They're talking about white nationalism.
Yes, of course they are. But the fact that they don't want to come out and say it is insane. And the fact that they're saying, oh, it might make some people uncomfortable. Well, it's not going to make the citizens of the country that are originally from there and that are originally there uncomfortable.
Yeah, but you're acting like we don't go through this stuff every single day. they're not allowed to say that because they're a national newspaper
I
and
know,
they'll get
but
arrested for hate crimes.
I'm highlighting that. The fact that that's insane. That's an insane way of having to report a story because you can't say the actual things out loud.
And that's why in that sense, it's more about free speech, and they don't have free speech. But a lot of people don't understand when you're saying that. They're thinking that they're just not. Never mind. Okay.
Now what? But they're also raising, apparently, Christian flags. And this is where I think the uncomfortable bit comes. Patriots are now raising Christian flags across the UK as part of the viral Raise the Colours campaign. And Britain demands radical change according to Inevitable West. So there is the flag.
Yeah, and like I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I love the fact that Christianity has a non-moving moral foundation. It does work very well with government to put guardrails on governments. The issue is if you get Christian nationalism, where religion and the government kind of become one. Christianity can become very authoritarian. It's just like Islam can become very authoritarian. Anytime a religion is combined with the government, you have a real chance for authoritarianism. I do like Christianity as a thing to kind of put guardrails on the government and to influence its laws and its media and things like that. I just don't know how integrated I want it with government. I watch a lot of debates. The Christian nationalists actually do have the best arguments. The problem is I've been watching debates lately with Christian nationalists, and the counterpoints have been, how does the system work if the government is an actual Christian nationalist government? What's the enforcement arm look like? What do the laws actually look like? What's the Puritan culture look like? Things like this.
And I mean, we do see what some governments that are like fully theocratic governments look like with Islam and with a lot of the countries over there, and what they look like in the past as well, in the historical context. And I think the best way for it to work, and that it has worked for the longest time, is with the separation of church and state. And because it keeps both those institutions doing the jobs that they need to do and running in a way to keep checks and balances of each other. But you can't have a government that can fully, control a church, and you can't have a church that fully controls the government, because the mechanisms and the ways they work and the ways they're important are completely different.
Yeah, but it's breaking down now is the issue, because Islam, LGBTQ, every other ideology is allowed to have influence over the government, but as soon as Christians want to have influence over the government, that's not okay. The original governments had heavy Christian influence, and I think it's okay for a Christian culture to influence the laws and things of a nation. It's just a matter of when it's going to go too far. But the fact that it's being completely excluded and other ideologies are allowed to infiltrate the government, it's causing a real rift within the government and its people.
Well, and for society, and as a way to institute a foundation of morals, values, even tradition, and even remembering what the country should be about or society should be striving for, it is very important. And again, I'm not religious, but I do acknowledge the big importance of religion, Western religions within societies, but at the same time, the lack and the loss of it in the past few decades, and how important it is to go back to that, but not to exceed and to go beyond where it becomes not useful
and
anymore.
If you are a Christian national and you're watching this and you're saying, well, no, I think it should be a Christian government, you also have to think what the LGBTQ, what the progressive liberals, what's happening in those ideologies right now. And right now they're putting on a religious skin suit of different forms of Christianity. Mm-hmm. So if Christian nationalism comes in and it does overtake the government, it becomes the primary ideology within the government, that now there's going to be infighting. Which one's real Christianity? Is it the LGBTQ Christianity? Is it the feminist Christianity? Which Christianity is it going to be? And now you're going to continue to fight wars and have disagreements over that.
Or here in Mexico, is it Catholicism pre-Vatican II, post-Vatican II? Are we going with the more radical Marxist ideals and with the Jesuits? Are we going with the other branches? Are we going Opus Dei? Like, there's too many ways in which it could go, awry, and also end up influencing the other branches as well.
And we have to realize the types of Christianity necessarily liked by certain people aren't liked by others, and the government likes one kind of Christianity right now. You can look at what's happening in Canada, the EU, and Australia. They're taking away the tax exemption status of independent churches and these LGBTQ churches and these churches that are really just doing everything but Christianity are really starting to be backed by the government, which is just a little scary. We have highlighted that on the show a few times.
Yeah, in Canada, they want to take away the tax-exempt status of churches that promote anti-abortion or pro-life ideals, which is insane because it comes within the, being value of life and valuing life in general.
Okay, let's get into the next.
But Benny P, hello Benny P. Benny P says, guys, don't fight in front of us. This is how
That's what they always
he said
say.
that before we started debating. But that's, I was telling Guy the other day, I don't understand why people get mad, always say that we're fighting when we're just debating or talking normally. I think if there was a camera on us, not when we're doing a show, people would think we are always fighting.
Well, and I like debating generally, but nobody likes to
And
see
me
us
too.
debate on camera.
No.
The problem is we need to find other people that we can bring in to debate. I was trying to learn how to do Discord so I can go on a few debate channels that I see. I can't figure it out for the life of me. I've downloaded it. I just can't hear any audio. I don't know, but yeah.
But yeah, maybe we will try to go on some debate channel for some.
Yeah. Well, and with the
at some
Discord, you can restream it to your own channel if we can learn how to do it, and then we can stream it on our channel as well.
And Benny P says, lol, yeah, I'm joking. But we have gotten comments long time ago and recently saying, oh, you're just fighting. Why are you always fighting? I don't want to watch, mommy and daddy
when
fight.
we first moved to Mexico, we had a different set with a bunch of books behind us, and I was intentionally every day trying to take the opposite opinion, even if it wasn't an opinion I believed in, just so we could get a debate, some back and forth. But people absolutely...
Because we both find those kinds of channels and that kind of content more interesting, I think. But maybe that's not our audience, and that's fine. But thank you for being here anyways. Speaking of insanity, from GAG, because I can't say the name, but go follow them because they're great. Loudoun County schools in Virginia just suspended 2 boys because they opposed sharing the locker room with a biological female. So this time, the tables have turned, who was pretending to be a boy. Loudoun County School makes the news a lot when it comes to one wrong decision after another.
Yeah, and this was good to see. Usually it's male students transitioning to female and going into female locker rooms, and females aren't going to be able to physically remove them. This is the first time I've kind of seen it happen the other way. And I think the reason we haven't seen it the other way, because I'm surprised the boys just didn't kick them out physically of the locker room.
Because they know they'd get in too much trouble.
Yeah, for a hate crime.
But at the same time, if this girl who's pretending to be a boy wants to actually be treated like a boy, then you attain to the consequences of now believing you are a man.
Yeah.
So you attain to the social norms and rules of being a boy.
Okay, let's read about it a little bit.
Read or watch?
Or whatever you want.
Well, I'll read it because you don't have your headphones.
Okay.
So yes, from Fox News, Loudoun County students suspended amid boys' locker room Title IX probe. 2 Stonebridge High School students are facing suspension after a Title IX investigation found them guilty of S harassment and S-based discrimination stemming from a locker room incident, but I thought that it was also a boy. The parents who are appealing the decision argue their sons were unfairly punished for questioning why a trans student was in the boys' locker room. Loudoun County Public Schools declined to comment, of course, but says it follows a comprehensive and objective Title IX process. So now, are they defending the girl who thinks she's a boy because of Title IX, so she's a woman, so she can't be discriminated against because she's a woman, or is it's a trans student, so it's technically a boy, and they have to attain to the rules of being a boy? Earlier this year, Fox News, they learned the group was questioning identifies as a male but presents as a female. The parent of one of the boys says her son was uncomfortable and adds that the student in question also recorded the group's reaction in the locker room, so recording in the locker room. This led to Governor Glenn Youngkin asking Attorney General Jason Myers to investigate the incident, which the AG describes as a disturbing misuse of authority by Loudoun County Public Schools. Now, according to the parents, LCPS found that 2 of the 3 boys are guilty of S harassment and S-based discrimination. The parents and their attorney, who are now appealing the decision by the school board.
That's pretty good. And let's remember that Loudoun County is where all these issues are kind of coming up. It's very interesting. It's this one school district, and it seems like almost every major incident that happens in the United States happens in this school district. There was another case where somebody's daughter was assaulted sexually in a bathroom, and he went to the school board meeting and just kind of lost his shit, started screaming at the school board, and they arrested the father for complaining about his daughter being violated in a bathroom, which is insane. Nothing was done to the other student.
Essayed.
Okay, let's continue.
But but again, like it's the whole question of, so it was a biological female, from what I'm understanding, that identified as a male but presented as a female anyways, and then she went into the locker room and filmed them. So maybe like trying to garner some kind of response and reaction to make themselves a victim, as has happened before.
I'm done trying to figure it out. Males are males, females are females. Have them go in different prisons, have them go in different changing rooms. Otherwise, there's too many issues that come up.
Back to
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yes, from Benny Johnson. Breaking DNI, Tulsi Gabbard just stripped security clearances from 37 individuals tied to the Russia collusion hoax. Yes.
Yeah, and this isn't the only time they're kind of clearing house now. A lot of these faulty political prosecutions that had happened during the Biden administration, they're going in and firing these people or putting them on leave and starting to conduct investigations. From this, what needs to happen is actual cases, people going to prison over this stuff, not just losing their jobs. But step one is you got to cut the cancer out so they don't continue their different levels of corruption within the government.
So has revoked security clearances of 37 current and former U.S. officials, accusing them of politicizing intelligence for partisan or personal gain. In a memo posted on social media, DNI Tulsi Gabbard directed several national security agency heads to immediately strip the officials of their clearances, stating the move was ordered by the president. The officials include several national security aides who served under former Democratic presidents Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Gabbard offered no evidence to support the accusations in the memo. Security clearances grant access to sensitive information. It remains unclear whether all 37 individuals listed in the memo still held active clearances. I was reading.
Okay, let's go into the last story of the day if we can.
Quebec?
Before we head what?
Quebec?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the last story before we go over to RUMBLE. I was actually thinking about putting this one over there too, but I didn't. So
From Table Salt, Quebec is the only jurisdiction in North America that doesn't spray its forests with glyphosate for forest management. It lets its fires burn, and now this is a fire map.
And we've gone over this a lot in the last week or two because Canada is doing climate lockdowns and not letting people into the forest because they're claiming there's fires. But if you see on the East Coast where a lot of these climate lockdowns are happening, there aren't a lot of forest fires there. And in Quebec, there are none. As a response, the government is spraying glyphosate on these trees, which is kind of like a Roundup, which dries out the tree and will cause more forest fire the next year. They're also refusing to do logging. They're refusing to do forest management, like clean up the brush on the ground, which is highly flammable. They're also refusing to do control burns, yet they're saying the climate disaster. There's a climate disaster because the government itself is not trying to prevent forest fires in any way, shape, or form, but helping it out by spraying glyphosate.
And now they're using it also as an excuse to go ahead and do climate lockdowns and do whatever they want.
Yeah, they need this prerequisite of all these forest fires to keep all their carbon emissions up, to keep the climate lockdowns on, and to tax the people through carbon tax credits as well. All this is going on in Canada. They're not backing down from all this globalist agenda that they have had. It's rather surprising. These forest fires is the one thing that is allowing them to point to that thing to say this justifies all these measures and all the freedoms we want to strip from you.
Yes, you really like this thing, don't you?
Well, when you bring guests on the show, that's kind of what you have to use. So
I'm not a guest.
You're okay.
I'm not a guest.
And we're going to head over to RUMBLE.
Benny.
If you're not subscribed over here on YouTube, please do so. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers.
Yes.
Maybe one day 1,000 so we can get monetized. Right now, we're going to head over to the Green Monster, though.
Yes, we'll see you over at RUMBLE. It's the same username. Thank you for being here. I never know what to say at the end.
Well, it's not the end because we're heading
Well,
over.
I never know what to say at the end of YouTube.
Still 88.